How do we evaluate AI competency? It's been 2 years of relentless talks in L&D about how AI is going to change the way organizations work and learn and deal with the competitions at international level. Now we are entering 2026, and it is right to pose and evaluate what new skills and competencies need to grow to develop tomorrow's workforce. And in the third episode of the Learning Horizons dedicated to AI, I am really excited to welcome Carolyn Shepherd in today's conversations. Carolyn's got a very unique career path. She started as a barrister who specialized in employment law, then qualified as an HR specialist, worked at a corporate HR, in which she got involved in a lot of tech project and rolling out an implementation of tech. And then decided a few years ago that it was the right time for her to pivot and get interested into AI. And in 2025, she was listed top 15, I think number 12, of HR Magazine most influential thinker on the thinker list. Sorry, I've just butchered that. So let me say that again, HR Magazine most influencer thinker list. And she's also on the AI 100 UK leader list. So it is a huge pleasure and a huge honor to have you with us today, Carolyn.
Thank you, Gail. What a lovely introduction. It's made me feel terrific.
But you are, and totally relevant. So today we are going to talk about AI competencies for us L&D professional, but I think it would be interesting to look a little bit at the wider workforce, so we can, pardon me, understand a bit better what are the skills, behaviors that employees needs to develop, and then later on in the conversations, we're going to explore how they can develop it. Are you ready for these conversations, Carolyn?
Yes, I am. I'm excited to have the conversation, Gail. It's very much an area that I'm obsessed with it, really. It's I do it all the time, so it's fantastic. It's perfectly my sweet spot, this is.
Brilliant. So let's start with AI competencies. There are a lot of AI competency frameworks that have been published in 2025, some by the government, some by other organizations. What do you think of them, and how do you think we should think about AI competencies when we are corporate L&Ds or when we're supporting corporate L&Ds?
Yeah, that's a good question. You've sort of shifted it, you've reframed it, which I really like that, because so often we just have a long list of things and we roll through that list, and then everyone sort of rubs their head and sort of says, well, I'm not really sure how we're going to make sure everybody gets this long list of things. And on that, I mean, obviously you've got adaptiveness and you've got critical thinking and all those good things that you have. But and you know, by the way, lots of AI tool training in there. That's really important. But before you get to that point, I think L&D, if it were me in that situation, I would be asking myself, how do I get the average person in my organization to think of AI as infrastructure rather than as something extra? Because it shouldn't be extra. It should be like electricity, really. You know, I mean, we don't think that when we, you know, when you think about electricity, Faraday discovered it. You and I were both at the chemistry at the Royal Chemistry Institution, wasn't it? The Institute of Chemistry. That's it, the Royal Institute of Chemistry, just recently. And because I'm absolutely useless at anything to do with science, I was sort of thinking, oh, you know, Faraday, chemistry. I don't know if Faraday had anything to do with chemistry, but I know that he did discover electricity. And what he did when he discovered that, he basically revolutionized our lives. He revolutionized society and business. But you know, it took 50 years before it became fairly mainstream in organizations, in business. So people had lots of time to switch from candles to light bulbs. But it wasn't the case. It isn't the case now. And certainly we've moved very much faster. We are moving very fast, but it's an infrastructure, nonetheless, isn't it? I mean, you've still very much got the electricity has become infrastructure. We don't think we're cheating when we turn the lights on to walk into a room instead of tripping over the sofa and the dog. We don't say, oh, sorry, I cheated. I popped the lights on. We do it really as something which is just, well, it's just a knee-jerk reaction, isn't it? If it's dark, you put the lights on. Well, that's really what it should be like for AI. And you would be quite surprised if you had to point this out to your employees. You'd be quite surprised. You'd be quite surprised if they said, no, I don't use electricity at all, actually. So you want to get people to the point whereby they are just thinking of it as normal. Yeah, that's what I would say. Try and get them to the point where they're thinking of it as normal.
I love the analogy with electricity, and and how it's AI is. Do you think it is, or it is going to be woven into all the infrastructure? How do you think it is actually? How embedded is it at the moment?
I think it is going to be woven into all the infrastructure. Yes, most certainly. And I don't think it is at the moment. I think we are sort of layering it on top of things. We're using it like a calculator, if you like, to sort of improve our efficiency and our productivity. But we're not using it as a transformational tool, which it is definitely transformational. I mean, electricity is transformational, isn't it? It's transformed our lives. And AI will be the same, generative AI, that is. And the difference really is probably worth thinking about. And that's one of the things that really, you know, the average person, let's say, if there is such a thing, of course, there isn't really such a thing as an average person, but let's just pretend there is for a moment. The average person doesn't really know what is meant by the fact that, oh, there's traditional AI, there's modern AI, this AI thing has been around for years, and now it's very different, supposedly. Well, how different and in what way? That's really important for people to understand, because otherwise they're afraid of it. I'm not surprised. It's quite understandable, isn't it?
So how do we bring people to embrace it and kind of make AI not this layer on top, but this making this scaffolding of the whole in processes and infrastructure of the organization? What needs
Yes.
to be done first, let's say?
Well, first, I mean, I've been running a course on, it's been a day course. Can you believe it? Yes, I know, cognitive overload central, but it was one day course because that's what that's what I was asked to produce, so I did. And we took 100 people, over 100 people through this course, and it was successful. And my energy levels were up here, Gail. I was like sort of, oh yes, don't worry, everything's going to be fantastic. We'll have a fantastic day, because I felt responsible for keeping everybody really up. And I have to say, they threw themselves into it. They were fantastic. It was virtual, so there was a lot of kind of opportunity for disconnect, but we didn't do that. We kept focused on it. And I think that's because they were complete beginners, non-technical professionals. And I think that's because they were intrigued. They were curious. Their employer had put them on the course. They didn't elect to do it. They hadn't paid for it themselves. So if you like, there was no skin in the game, really. But they were very much engaged and they were taking part. But the reason I think it is because we didn't go straight to the AI tools, which they wanted when asked what would they like to learn about. They said they would like to learn about tools that would help them do their job. Yes, wouldn't we all? Because they thought that was probably the right thing to say anyway to their employer. But first of all, we started with the mindset shift. It's so important. And we went through ethics. We started off with what is AI? What is AI? Not just what is generative AI, but what is AI? And that was a third of the course. There were 3 modules. That was the first one. And I'm using the same 3 in the AI Ready Planner that I'm producing now, because I've learned that this is really important. You start off with what is AI, then you move to the what are my values, meaning yours personally, your values about AI. How do you feel about it? And you have to welcome all voices in that, Gail, and that's where you get the average person in your organization taking it up, because they may not feel particularly passionate or dispassionate about AI, or they might have had a couple of bad experiences, or they might have heard some bad things. Other people might be card-carrying members of the I Love AI Society. So you've got to find a balance, a spectrum. It's a spectrum, and it's more interesting for being that. And then when you've done all of that, you can move on to your tool training.
So you really start, there is, even though we've been talking about, a lot of us have been talking about AI for quite a few years, it's still essential to actually define a base level on AI literacy. What are the keywords, are the key vocabulary, what does it mean? And then when we all agree on what sense we're giving to the words, basically, we can move on to talking about project and collaborating about changing the way we work.
Yes, that's right, because you need a safe space for that first part, very much a safe space where people can feel, I mean, I know we talk about it a lot in L&D, but that's where development happens. It's in the safe spaces. And that's why it's so important. So your first part of really the major part, what I regard as the major and the most important part of those 3 modules, are the first 2 modules, and those are the development modules.
And it was very interesting when we were catching up just before the call. You said that it's pretty much 50-50, right? In the workforce, you've got 50% of the workforce that's really supportive of the AI, see it as an opportunity and an exciting challenge. And you've got 50% that's what are they? Not interested, fearful? What sort of emotions do we have?
Yeah, I would say fairly kind of distant from it. If you say, do you use AI? They might say yes. And then you ask how often, and they might say once a week, once a month. And you realize that they haven't hooked on it. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't imagine just using it once a week. Can you? I mean, I use it all the time, right? Because it's infrastructure for me. It's like electricity to me and to you. But for somebody who says they use it once a week, believe me, that is not infrastructure.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And how do you how do you think should be managed the conversations? What's productive between the people who are resistant about AI? What do they bring to the conversation? And obviously the enthusiastic. How do we manage the two groups?
Yeah. Well, first of all, of course, you need to really it's it's a bit of a balancing act, isn't it? Because I deal with it through a river analogy, because I think that the river metaphor, because you've gone to something very deep there that I hadn't thought about for a little while. But yes, you need to calm down the enthusiasts, because otherwise they're going to really switch everybody else off. And you need to encourage the let's call them the skeptics, because they are a bit more skeptical. You need to encourage them and know that it's a place where they're going to be welcome and that they have value. That's really, really important. So as I say, I used a river metaphor in the summer when I was doing a keynote with, it was the National Employability Week, and so it was about. I was trying to communicate with people across all ages and all competencies, and so I used a river metaphor because they gave me 20-minute scale. I mean, how do you do it in 20 minutes, right? So I thought, okay, right, let's go. I mean, I'm sure somebody else got probably 40 minutes, but I got 20. So I said, right, river, we're all on this boat together on the river, and really AI is the river. It's the age we're living in. It's not an option. It's there. It's running through our lives, and we're on this boat. Okay, so you can get off and go onto the bank and opt for something else, but you are really opting out, and it's important to know that. So you need to be informed in order to choose to opt out. And so you start that off, and then you explain that the river has some people dwell on that river for enjoyment, for leisure. They love it, don't they? You have some of your happiest times on the river, but other times people are really struggling to stay alive on a river, because maybe they've got choppy waters, maybe there are stones and rapids that they weren't aware of. What's round the corner? What's round the bend? You can you can sort of drown in 3 inches of water or something in a bath if you're not careful. So you can certainly go under in a river. And so it is a place where great happiness happens, but also great sadness. And for that reason, we need to get some river skills. And by the way, that's not a thing. I just called it that. I mean, I just call them river skills. But that helps people see that they're all on a boat together. And to take the analogy a little bit further, with my HR background, I suppose, I said, what would you do if there were 5 of you on this boat and HR came along and said that there was going to be some redundancies and that anybody without river skills, anybody that they just gave you a number, just said, you've got 5 people, but 3 have to go. Who are you going to keep? And then, your captain, and then you ask the audience, and they, of course, they come up with things. Well, who's got the river skills, and so on and so forth. And then a bit deeper thinking, a bit more reflection, and people start to say, well, hang on a minute, what happens if? So maybe we should train somebody up to actually have some river skills. Yeah, how many people? Oh, right. And then they sort of think, oh, yeah. And then they realize that probably they need everybody on this boat, because it's not great to be just sailing down this river with 2 people who do need to sleep, have some time, be creative, and do all the things that humans do, by the way, and build relationships with other people that are identical to them. Because actually, that's not society at all. That's not how we live our lives. And so it starts to reflect, and people realize that actually society, and therefore organizations, are a better place for having variety. And humans are brilliant. They're very rich at variety. So that, and AI is not, by the way.
Well, that's wonderful. That's a wonderful metaphor. I love the river metaphor. And I was just wondering, so how do we equip people with those river skills? Because typically, right, when we do a competency framework or a skills framework, we start with what good look like. Are we able now in 2026 to define what good look like for various jobs when it comes to AI?
I'm going to ask you to repeat that because it froze my side, and I think it would be good.
So yes, we're talking about, competency is defining what good look like, good behavior, good skills, good skill set. Do we feel like now in 2026 we are able to produce relevant competencies about AI and grow the workforce to adapt to this river, grow the river skills?
Yeah, well, what I would say is I wouldn't worry too much about that. You see, what we're really trying to do is give people their heads, isn't it? Give them the agency to be able to decide some of those things for themselves. It's just too big. This is too big to control. This is about people having thoughts and reactions and engaging with AI, and hopefully being really good at doing all those things. So that's really where I would focus. And I would make sure that people have the skills and the agency, and they know they have the agency because they balance responsibility with creativity, and they understand some of the basic rules that the organization runs along. That's really important. Obviously, you've got to align with those. You'll make those decisions as an organization. How do we do things around here? We've always done that, haven't we? We've always had our policies and so forth. So, and that's, by the way, woefully absent at the moment. I can't believe how few organizations have got AI policies. I know that, yeah, you don't have an electricity policy. I get that, but they probably did at the beginning of, the 1900s.
There are standards, right? When you build a house and when you build a
There
building, there are
yes.
absolutely standards on how, where the wires are and how many wires and plug sockets.
That's true. There are, aren't there?
So absolutely. But looking if we shift from the one side of the competency element, I like to think that competency is a starting point of talent development. So we know what good look like, right? And then we walk around obviously assessing each individual, each professional on how they compare to this benchmark. And then we need to obviously train them. And eventually they practice, they apply maybe in real life, and they get feedback. And for me, I'm fascinated by the fact that AI is the ultimate way to get personalized feedback. Like today, I'm going to listen to my AI companion telling me how I could have done these facilitations differently, the type of quality of my question, the humming and ahhing. It is very powerful. But it presents as well some risks for the organizations, because it's data that are being captured and being used, and it's how we use them as well. So my question, sorry, it was a lot of waffling. Shifting from the competencies, that how do we really build a very personalized talent development experience in each organizations that is safe for everybody?
Okay, well, I don't know if you're referring now perhaps to a conversation that we had earlier in relation to Microsoft Graph. I mean, I don't know how many people are using Microsoft M365 that are listening to this, but I guess most organizations are Microsoft focused. Certainly the ones I meet, they are. Although I know that others are also bringing out their enterprise versions, and some tech companies who are very sort of AI forward are actually introducing others to the to their to their technical stack. I mean, for example, and I'm not going off on too long, but I just want people to know that I'm not completely Microsoft mad. I mean, for example, OpenAI has an enterprise version amongst others. But yeah, I work with the Microsoft version a lot, the enterprise version a lot, because my clients do. And we do that because it's the go-to. You know, you get past most tech departments straight away if you're using Microsoft, don't you? They're like, oh yeah, that's okay. Now, one of the reasons that it's okay is because it has some fantastic security built in. I mean, it really is security first. And by the way, is making some mistakes and has made some mistakes. But the key to remaining credible and responsible is that you know what to do. You have a standard operating procedure when they go wrong and what you're going to do about it. And that's what I would encourage all organizations to start thinking about, because that's where you lose your credibility, or actually you win a bit of credibility, because even, you know, when you're tested, do you have a response? Are you ready? And the answer to most people at the moment, I think, would be no, we're not really. We'd panic, we'd have a meltdown. So what I would say is, I was fascinated to read in Ignite's, which is Microsoft's Ignite book that they did to actually sum up all the different talks at Ignite, at their Ignite conference. I actually thought of it as a bit of a Christmas present, which makes me very sad, doesn't it? I was going to read this, but I did. It was so boring, Gail. I turned it into a podcast, which I did with Notebook LM, and I would recommend anybody, if you're a bit bored with the security answer or any other topic, go onto Microsoft, go onto Google's Notebook LM, upload the document, and ask it to create a podcast about it. It's much more palatable. Having said that, Microsoft Graph is the layer of Microsoft which it collects a lot of data about your organization. It thinks Microsoft, it seems to me, if anybody's ever lost their password trying to get into Microsoft, you'll realize that it is organization first. You are second as an individual on Microsoft, and it drives you a bit nuts, but that's the way it is. So it's very, very security focused. And Microsoft Graph is there to collect all the data it's a big, massive data lake about individuals and what they're doing in the organization. It's not stalking them. It's supposed to be kind of like designed to know what they're talking about, what they're interested in, and what level of competency they've reached to a certain extent. And they'll do that through listening in to and collecting data about their, probably email exchanges, their meetings on Teams and chats and things like that, as well as the way they're using the apps of Microsoft apps. Now that graph level has to be purchased. So if you're wondering whether or not you've got it, you need to speak with your tech department and they'll tell you. And I'm sure Microsoft will be able to quote you on some ridiculous pricing strategy for it if you haven't got it. But anyway, that is one thing, because when you get these interventions, which you and I were talking about earlier, Gail, where you're using AI, generative AI, to understand, well, you're using AI to understand the patterns, first of all, which is traditional AI, to understand the patterns that you're looking for. And the patterns you would be looking for, let's say, is a particular competency level. And then you want to make interventions to encourage people on a personal level to move forward, okay, to learn more, develop more. So in order to do that, you would then be able to use generative AI tools, which would engage the person. That generative AI would be drawing from graph and able to suggest targeted, relevant, personalized pieces of learning and development that would help the organization achieve its objective. That's how it's supposed to work.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. I've got a question though, and unfortunately, it will have to be the last questions because time has run away. And I've got so many other questions to ask you, but probably for another episode. My last question would be, that sounds amazing. It's almost like a dream come true, but how, as an employee, am I guaranteed, can I trust that this knowledge is only known for my personal development and will not be used by other part of the organizations to for performance purposes?
Yeah. And of course, that's a very real question. And I expect that educated, when I mean educated, I mean AI ready employees will start to think about that. So you need to have an answer to it. And I don't know what the answer might be because, you might actually be using it for performance purposes if you're using it in a way that wasn't intended. I have no idea. So you'll need to set up your own policies on things like that. And I think that it's absolutely right and proper that organizations do. And I encourage job seekers to give them some agency back to say, look, if you think you've been discriminated against for reasons which are unfair or unlawful, or just you simply don't agree with, right? Because it might be the case that they're not unlawful reasons, then what can you do about it? Well, obviously, it makes you feel really hopeless, doesn't it? Helpless, hopeless. So, what I would suggest, and I know it's a small thing, but it's quite important to the individual, and that is they can decide who they want to apply for work with. And that can be they can have a checklist of things which they would only work. I would only work for an organization that did these things. And this can also help you retain good talent. And that would be, for example, a privacy policy, which is in language an average person can understand, not in legal speak, and to have how does your ATS system, your applicant tracking system work? What are the criteria that you're judging on? Are you looking at things like, for example, are you even perhaps inadvertently, without realizing it, allowing your AI assistant to filter out people with in certain age bands? Because there's lots of ways you can indirectly discriminate without realizing. So I think if you'd had an audit of those things and then you were able to boast on your website that you'd done that because it really matters to you and that it does matter to you, that you feel it, all right? I think that's important, and that gives people agency back in a world where really machines are super powerful.
That is, thank you very much. That is a great conclusion. And I think it was very powerful to actually flip back this, as you said, this AI mountain that we're all facing and make it human. We have some elements of control, absolutely, but we can't really have an influence or any form of control if we don't actually develop the baseline of being able to communicate about AI. And that what you said at the very beginning, it's first, everybody should develop an element of AI literacy, and then they can choose to opine or about or accelerate like what you were painting with Microsoft Graph, but what this accelerations will look like. It was one of the questions that I had, but unfortunately we're running out of time. So thank you, Carolyn, and we will have to have you back about the acceleration and the scaling up.
Thank you very much, Gail. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And for everybody watching, we are on the Think Skills Learning Horizon page where you're probably watching this video. We will see, and you will find below the video, a whole range of resources shared by Carolyn. So I encourage you to scroll down now. Thank you very much and see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.